What if I told you that the current situation in Ukraine is far more critical than we've been led to believe? Welcome to our channel, where we delve into the facts and figures that matter. Firstly, let's examine the issue of tank contributions. According to Macgregor, the numbers fall drastically short of the initial promise. Germany contributes 17 tanks, Portugal adds 3, with Germany offering an additional 14. This is a far cry from the 88 tanks initially promised, indicating a dwindling commitment to the cause. But tanks aren't the only concern. For the Ukrainians, the lack of substantial tank support may feel like a blessing compared to the severe ammunition shortage they're facing. Their war reserves deplete at an alarming rate, and their factories, despite their best efforts, cannot ramp up production efficiently enough to meet the demand. Unlike in the past, there's no surplus capacity for missiles or rockets. While they hope for some support, it may not be substantial enough to significantly alter the course of the conflict. On the other side, the Russian military appears to be preparing for a long-term conflict against NATO and the United States. Reports indicate their munitions and equipment factories operate around the clock to ensure readiness for an extended engagement. The situation in Ukraine, therefore, is dire. The ammunition shortage places them in a precarious position where retreat and regrouping may become necessary for survival. But even this doesn't guarantee safety. As desperation grows, some claims by the Ukrainians may seem exaggerated. However, when you consider their calls for assistance and the urgency emphasized by Secretary Stenberg, it's clear they're in desperate circumstances. They need assistance urgently to avoid further escalation of the crisis. Contrary to the portrayal of Russia as a pariah, their economy thrives due to extensive global business engagements. Limited sanctions from the US and certain European countries show signs of fracture. Criticisms directed at Russia should instead be applied to the situation in Ukraine, where morale, leadership, and training deficiencies are more apparent. In conclusion, the situation in Ukraine is critical. The lack of military support, the severe ammunition shortage, and the impending threat from Russia all contribute to a dire scenario. The urgency cannot be overstated, and the need for international support is paramount. It's a situation that requires immediate attention and action. Can we trust the words of a man who some say prioritizes personal gain over professional integrity? Today, we delve into the swirling controversy surrounding General Milley's remarks amid growing skepticism and waning confidence in the current administration. Our focus turns to General Milley, a seasoned military figure whose recent comments have sparked intense debate. Critics argue that Milley's alignment with the administration's agenda seems more about echoing their narrative, rather than maintaining a stringent professional integrity. Some speculate that retirement prospects and potential future financial rewards from left-wing benefactors could be influencing Milley's stance. In a bold comparison, critics liken Milley to certain French army officers of the 1930s, known more for their compliance than assertiveness. The implication that Milley's career has been marked by a tendency to conform rather than confront challenges, painting him as a yes man throughout his military service. The current situation revolves around strategic advancements, with the aim to secure the axis of advance for a force of approximately 250,000 Russian combat troops. Positioned at key locations including Zaporozhye, Bakhmut, and Luhansk, these troops form 3 major concentrations across western Russia, South, and Belarus. Ongoing strikes involving air, missile, and rocket artillery primarily focus on neutralizing air defense systems, ensuring unhindered operations for close air support drones, rockets, and missiles. Experts anticipate a significant northward and westward movement of these forces in the coming days, facilitated by armored infantry following behind armor and artillery strikes. This approach complements the open, rolling terrain, which favors armored warfare, along with traditional Russian military tactics. Despite the majority of troops being relatively inexperienced or reservists, they are under the command of seasoned combat officers, a factor emphasized as crucial. These forces have undergone extensive training and preparation, repeatedly practicing maneuvers and deployments. Their objective, once the remaining strongholds in the Donbas region are cleared, is to secure everything east of the Dnieper River, extending from the Russian border to Kiev. But where is the limit? Some believe it should exist, but pragmatically it may depend on the level of desperation within the Ukrainian state to survive given the current dire circumstances. So, we find ourselves asking, has General Miley become a mouthpiece for the administration's narrative? Or does he maintain his professional integrity, despite the swirling controversy and dwindling credibility of the administration? Only time will reveal the truth. Until then, the debate rages on. Have you ever wondered how our perception of war changes with age and experience? It's a fascinating subject that intertwines history, psychology, and sociology. Let's delve into this topic by looking at the words of a certain commentator who foresees a future where states may resort to enlisting individuals from younger age groups. He emphasizes that youth doesn't necessarily equate to ineffectiveness in combat. To validate his point, he draws parallels to historical examples such as the young soldiers in the Normandy landings during World War II. These inexperienced fighters demonstrated the potential effectiveness of determination in combat. Interestingly, this commentator believes that young soldiers, untouched by previous combat experiences, often display remarkable courage compared to seasoned veterans who have witnessed the lethality of warfare. However, he acknowledges the grim reality that bravery and determination alone cannot overcome overwhelming and accurate firepower, a significant advantage possessed by the Russian forces. In response to remarks made by Mr. Van regarding one conscript's perspective, he suggests exercising understanding, but also underscores the broader context. He points out that towards the end of World War II, many European nations were depleted of manpower, resulting in reduced enthusiasm for combat. Furthermore, he mentions reports of the Ukrainian security service apprehending deserters and executing some as a deterrent, indicating a more dire situation than what Van may acknowledge. He firmly rejects the notion that balloons could be used for strategic steering, emphasizing the unpredictable nature of atmospheric currents once launched. Drawing from insights from the U.S. Weather Service, he indicates that the balloon's trajectory coincided with the typical path of the jet stream over North America, suggesting that any overflight of sensitive areas was likely coincidental rather than intentional. Expressing skepticism about the balloon's purported intelligence-gathering capabilities, he points out the extensive satellite network available to China, making reliance on such primitive methods seem improbable. Moreover, he underscores more pressing concerns, such as unauthorized Chinese presence in U.S. academic and corporate settings, as well as the influx of illegal immigrants totaling 5 million since President Biden took office. Regarding accusations implicating Russia, he dismisses them as unfounded, noting Russia's extensive satellite infrastructure compared to China's. He labels the balloon incident as absurd and criticizes attempts to scapegoat Russia for it. Commenting on the reported cyber attack on Germany, he deems it an egregious violation of international law, suggesting that it effectively constitutes an act of war. To summarize, we've explored the potential impact of youth and inexperience on warfare, the grim realities of battle, the unlikely use of balloons for strategic steering, and the shifting landscape of international relations and cybersecurity. It's a complex and interconnected world, one that continues to evolve and surprise us. What if the very leaders we trust to guide us through times of war are the ones feeding us misinformation? Imagine a world where the Secretary of Defense, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and other senior officials are more concerned with aligning with political directives than providing accurate intelligence. This isn't a dystopian novel. It's a reflection on the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. In the throes of this conflict, a narrative has emerged portraying Ukraine as the underdog hero and Russia as the corrupt villain. However, these narratives are riddled with inaccuracies and oversimplifications. It's widely understood that Ukraine stands little chance against Russia, and yet the narrative persists. The Russian forces are often painted as incompetent and corrupt, while the Ukrainians are glorified. But this narrative is largely fabricated. There are well-discussed issues of corruption within the Ukrainian military, issues that extend up to the level of lieutenant colonel. Embezzlement of funds and equipment is widespread, And this corruption is well known among soldiers. They express their disillusionment on platforms like Telegram, even calling for the removal of President Zelensky's administration. This misinformation is not isolated to the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. It mirrors the broader inefficiencies within the US government and the Pentagon's handling of such matters. Despite the reliability of many young service members, there's a critical need for thorough vetting procedures to ensure the trustworthiness of individuals granted access to sensitive information. One must question how an individual with red flags surrounding his behavior and communication was granted access to such sensitive information. Could this individual have been coached or manipulated to convey a specific message? Regardless of the individual's intentions or background, the severity of their actions remains unchanged. Even within the National Guard, individuals must understand the gravity of their actions. In conclusion, it's clear that misinformation is not only prevalent but potentially harmful in times of conflict. From the Ukrainian-Russian conflict to the broader inefficiencies within the US government, the need for transparency, honesty, and thorough vetting procedures is evident. Age alone shouldn't discount someone's capability or access to sensitive information. However, an unquestionable critical need or utility must exist. The narrative of war is often more complex than the simplified version presented to the public, and the truth is essential to understanding the real dynamics at play. Have you ever found yourself pondering the depth of public understanding regarding the tumultuous events in Ukraine? It's a sobering thought that the level of awareness might be woefully inadequate. This deficit of attention, it seems, grants governments the freedom to partake in military operations largely unchallenged and without the roar of public protest. A sobering lesson we've gleaned from historical conflicts such as Vietnam. Now cast your mind to the integrity of the leadership within the Defense Department. While civilian leaders may voice certain convictions, those at the pinnacle of power are likely privy to the stark reality. The weight of honesty and integrity in such situations is immense. Shouldn't any honorable individual resign if they were consciously misleading the public? Consider historical precedents like General Marshall's cautious handling of sensitive information during his tenure, an exemplar of integrity and truthfulness. The chances of seeing that missing 400 million return? About as likely as witnessing the revival of freedom, justice, and the American way in Ukraine. A nation currently in the grip of oppression that eerily mirrors that of a single-party fascist state. From the start, Ukraine has been primarily utilized as a device to target Russia, with the ultimate intention of destabilizing and usurping the Putin regime. This viewpoint paints the situation as a humanitarian catastrophe and an offense against the Ukrainian people, rather than a matter of interest for NATO countries. Individuals such as Blinken, Nuland, and Sullivan are perceived as ideologues who place their agenda of harming Russia above the welfare of Ukraine or NATO. Despite their intentions, attempts to weaken Russia have ultimately proven fruitless. Russia has emerged stronger, both economically and militarily. This failure has also incited internal divisions within NATO, illustrated by the dissatisfaction in France. So, to summarize, the situation in Ukraine is a complex one, with a history that stretches back to the early days of the conflict. The lack of public awareness allows governments to act without significant scrutiny, and the integrity of leadership plays a critical role in these events. Despite attempts to destabilize Russia, it has only emerged stronger, causing rifts within NATO. The face of Ukraine today is a reflection of these events, a nation grappling with oppressive control and a humanitarian disaster. As we continue to observe the developments, the importance of remaining informed and vigilant cannot be overstated.